The city was a whirlwind of noise and activity. Cars honked, people rushed, and buildings stretched towards the sky. Neil, lost in the sea of faces, felt strangely alone. He had always been a dreamer, more comfortable in the world of books than in the chaos of reality. His days were predictable: work at the library, a quiet dinner, and then back to his books. This routine, once comforting, now felt suffocating. He longed for something more, a spark to ignite his soul. One Tuesday evening, the city felt particularly relentless. The air was thick with humidity, and the scent of exhaust fumes filled Neil's nostrils. He was walking home from work, his usual route taking him through a bustling marketplace. Stalls overflowed with colorful fabrics, exotic spices, and trinkets from faraway lands. The vendors' calls, a blend of languages Neil didn't understand, washed over him. He felt invisible, just another face in the crowd. Neil paused at a crosswalk, the red hand flashing its stern command. He looked up at the towering buildings, their glass facades reflecting the fiery hues of the setting sun. Was he destined to always be an observer in this city, a silent witness to the lives unfolding around him? He yearned for connection, for someone to share the weight of his thoughts and dreams. Little did he know, fate had a serendipitous encounter in store for him. Trisha, a whirlwind of energy, maneuvered through the crowd with practiced ease. She loved the city's vibrant energy, the way it pulsed with life. Unlike Neil, she thrived on the chaos, drawing inspiration from the constant movement around her. She was on a mission, rushing home to prepare for an important presentation the next day. Her mind raced with ideas, her heart thrumming with a mix of excitement and nerves. As she hurried across the street, her bag snagged on a passerby's arm, groceries tumbled onto the pavement, apples rolling in every direction. Trisha let out a frustrated sigh. This was not how she envisioned her evening. She crouched down, gathering her scattered belongings, when a pair of hands reached down to help. She looked up into the kindest eyes she had ever seen. "Let me help you with that," Neil offered, his voice gentle and reassuring. Trisha felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you," she replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I'm such a klutz sometimes." They gathered the remaining items in comfortable silence. As Neil handed her the last apple, their fingers brushed. A jolt of electricity ran up Trisha's arm, and she couldn't help but notice the way Neil's cheeks mirrored her own blush. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, a silent acknowledgement of something unexpected and intriguing. The following weekend, the city hosted its annual book fair. Neil, a devoted bibliophile, wouldn't have missed it for the world. He browsed the stalls, his fingers trailing along the spines of countless novels. Each book held the promise of adventure, a portal to new worlds and perspectives. He was lost in his own world when a familiar voice broke through his thoughts. "I didn't expect to see you here," Trisha said, a playful smile gracing her lips. "You're not just a rescuer of runaway groceries." Neil laughed, surprised and delighted by her appearance. "And you're not just a klutz who loses her groceries," he countered, his heart pounding with a nervous excitement he hadn't felt in years. They spent the afternoon lost in conversation, discovering a shared passion for literature. Trisha, it turned out, was just as much of a bookworm as Neil, but her tastes leaned towards poetry and philosophy, a stark contrast to Neil's preference for historical fiction and fantasy. As they discussed their favorite authors and debated the merits of different genres, Neil found himself drawn to Trisha's quick wit and infectious laughter. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the bookstores, Neil realized he didn't want this day to end. He found himself wanting to know everything about Trisha, from her favorite childhood book to her wildest dreams. He worked up the courage to ask for her number, his hand trembling slightly as he held out his phone. "I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on Nietzsche," he said, hoping he wasn't completely out of his depth. Trisha smiled, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "I think Nietzsche would approve of a more romantic setting for a philosophical debate," she teased. Neil's heart sank, but before he could retreat into his shell of shyness, Trisha took his phone and entered her number. "How about dinner next week? We can argue about existentialism over pasta."